ladies and gentlemen. Let's get ready here. He's taken another one and another, and Howard Foster has stopped it. Wow, that is going to be controversial.
That's a crunching right hand, and that must finish it. It must finish it.
Taylor trying to catch himself, using his jab, eats a right hand, another right hand, and he goes down. Oh my goodness!
The dream is made real. Ricky Hatton rocks the world with a truly stunning win over a modern legend. He is the champion of the world.
Yes, what's going on, people? It's Raps on TV, here to talk the best things in boxing as per usual. Busy weekend, namely because we've got the heavyweight clash featuring Deontay Wilder and Ruiz Ortiz taking place this Saturday down in Las Vegas. But we also got on Friday the MTK show, which is the Golden Contract, now being shown on Sky Sports, and it is being headlined, I guess you could say, by O'Hara Davis. The draw's been made and we're looking forward to getting into that later on today. But I guess from an agenda, we've talked on the two topics: Wilder Ortiz rematch, MTK. Also a bit of news coming out from the States last week about the PBC Belts, referring to an interview with Billy Wagner and Chris Mannix for Sports Illustrated. And then we also got confirmation that AJ versus Ruiz, the rematch, will be sold for $24.95, I believe, for standard digital, and $29.95 for HD for subscribers on Sky Sports. So that's the pay-per-view news going on around that. But I guess there's no better place to start really than the heavyweight clash that is taking place this weekend. A lot of people have, I guess, commented and said they're not too keen on this fight. They don't see a reason why these guys should be fighting again. I mean, I guess you could argue, yeah, you know, Wilder got the knockout, but was it a conclusive performance? I think the key thing, I think we're always going to have to kind of remember with Wilder is we will never see a conclusive performance outside of first round knockout or anything, you know, early rounds, early doors. So for Wilder, I do understand why he felt he wanted to go back. There's definitely this whole concept around the seventh round and the doctor stopping it and how hurt he was and yada yada yada. But I think you also got to remember that he put Ortiz down in the fifth round, and Ortiz was saved by the bell because once the count was over, the round finished. So I think, you know, there's definitely justifications for Wilder in terms of maybe he wasn't confident, also he wasn't happy with his performance. For those of you that listened to the interview, he spoke about the fact that he was suffering from the flu leading up to the fight, coughing out mucus in the ring walk. So again, you would understand that he wasn't 100%. So maybe he wants to test himself against an elite fighter when he is 100%. I think a lot of people are going to be saying, well, you know, Ortiz doesn't stand a chance. Are they right? Let's get into the essentials and maybe start to break that down in better detail. So going into this fight, we have Deontay Wilder, who is now 41-0, with one draw against the infamous Tyson Fury. And we have Ruiz Ortiz, who is 31-1, with that loss coming against his now opponent, Deontay Wilder. Both guys have a high knockout ratio. You're talking about Deontay Wilder with 95, and Ortiz is coming in at 76. So, you know, you could argue that, you know, these are two of the biggest, not the biggest, but two big punchers within the heavyweight division so far, maybe top five. I guess for both of them, what will be interesting is that everyone would be discrediting their resume or CV, if you like. But yeah, if we're looking at the essentials, we're talking about Ortiz, who is definitely the older fighter, the shorter fighter, and, you know, it's no hiding from the fact that probably from a health perspective, the fighter with more health issues. The first fight was obviously called off. Before they actually had that took place, it was postponed because of Ortiz's failure with a drugs test. That was later to be found to be linked to blood pressure tablets or medication. But I think ultimately, if you're going in fighting at the elite level and you're taking blood pressure tablets, I think it's safe to say your health isn't probably at where it needs to be. So definitely for Ortiz, you know, there are things going against him, but I think the strongest thing that goes in his favour is his skill set. And I'll take you back to the first fight. Wilder really struggled to find rhythm, build up the jab, and he really struggled to. If I know we see it quite often, but he really struggled to ward Ortiz. Give Ortiz something to think about. Ortiz was coming forward, applying pressure, cutting down the distance, throwing out the jab. I would argue that he took away Wilder's jab. I know Wilder did throw a few and landed with a few, but I think if you look at his other fights, I think Wilder's been able to establish and be more confident with the jab earlier on. I don't think that happened in the first fight. So I think Ortiz, from a skill set perspective, is definitely somebody that will cause Wilder problems. And I don't see, this being any different. I think he will cause Wilder problems throughout the fight. I think the other thing to mention as well, we're talking about, and I guess it's documented. We've seen Luis Ortiz in the camp. I think from a perspective of who he's got bringing into his team to help him win, he's brought in Larry Wade. So for those of you that may not be familiar with him, Larry Wade works with Sean Porter. So he was recently in the camp with Sean Porter for his Errol Spence fight, and he recently worked with KSI going into the KSI Logan fight. If you were to draw any similarities, clearly one's a pro, one's a pure novice, but if you were to say what are Larry Wade's strong sets and strength, you would definitely be saying that his ability to get his fighters to apply pressure and to increase their stamina is probably one of his key assets, and I think that's definitely going to be an interesting thing coming into play for this fight. So that's one area you would say, it's an area that Ortiz will hoping that he's fitter, and where he saw success in the first fight, his stamina will allow him to maybe sustain the pressure. Because look, I don't think anyone can watch that fight and say there were many rounds that Wilder outboxed Ortiz. There were none. There were just the rounds where he knocked him down, and I think that's quite key when you're fighting against a skilled operator, and hence why I say for Wilder this is a dangerous fight. So we're going to be interesting to see with Ortiz in his camp how he's reflected with camp. I think for Wilder, Wilder definitely needs to be saying to himself, I need to command the jab as early as possible. I need to be, forceful with my jab, not bringing it back to my guard straight away, leaving it in there, sitting on it if you like, sitting in with the jab when he throws it, creating that distance, because he's gonna have the longer reach. So any advantage will play to his skill set. You would hope he's not suffering from the flu, so you would hope that that's allowed him to work harder in training and allow him to be healthier on the night. So hopefully, as long as he's not taking any shortcuts in this camp, you would argue that he's going to be the stronger fighter. He's going to be the fitter fighter. What have we seen from Wilder in his last two fights since the Ortiz win that would make me say he's going to outbox him at any time during this fight? Nothing. I think it's fair to say, and it's not a disrespect to Wilder, I just think, him being able to outbox Ortiz is going to be tough. I think it's either a knockout or it's a shoot, or it's a straight shootout between the two in terms of how Wilder should play this game. I think if he wants to, and I will say be at range, but if he wants to try to be crafty, I think that, I think that's not necessarily his strong point. So, really looking forward to seeing how he breaks that down. I think from a defensive point of view, I think Wilder has to work on his defence. He got caught quite a few times against Ortiz. I think Ortiz landed the biggest shot out of the two, within the first 4 rounds. So, he was definitely a bit more dominant there. And clearly the 7th round, you can go to CompuBox and look at the stats there as well. So, for me, I think, we've got to say Ortiz has got a big ask, but he seems to have been, taking the preparation to get himself in the right position to potentially see victory. The one thing I would say, which you would have to say is a grey area with the Larry Wade, is how long would, is one camp going to be enough? He's just come in with Ortiz for this camp. He hasn't been working with him for maybe a year or 6 months. It is really just for this fight. So from Ortiz's perspective, how quickly will he be able to adjust, and how quickly will we see the benefits of working with someone like a Larry Wade? I think one thing we've got to talk about in this fight, and I don't know what you guys as boxing fans are thinking about this, but I do feel that the promotion has been good, more than good. I think you look at and I'm talking about even the small details, you look at the posters, the positioning of, Ortiz's body and the stance that he's in, and then the Wilder in the back behind him, with just the headshot, the colours. I think some of the sort of trailers that they've made, I think I like it. The fact that it's dark, but alarming colours, red, sirens. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think will help play them out. I think you can see Fox are definitely interested with PBC and the kind of portfolio and for assets or fighters that they have. So yeah, I think Fox making the most of this, and that's good to see. As fans, we're getting a lot of behind the scenes content, which we can never really complain about. So we have to just take our hats off when it's due and say they are doing a good job. Other fights on this weekend, like I said, I'm going to focus on, and I think I said this maybe 2 weeks ago, but MTK, they have the Golden Contract tournament that's now being contested at lightweight, and that is taking place this Friday down at York Hall. So we've had the draw today. Interesting clashes. You've got O'Hara Davis going up against Yogan Loon. We've got Sachi going up against Tyron McKenna. So yeah, definitely some interesting clashes. Going to see how that plays out in terms of the full draw. And when we say the full draw, it's like what are the fixtures going to be like? You've seen O'Hara talking a lot. I don't know whether that's to bring attention or whether he's being maybe a bit arrogant. I tended to think the latter, because fixing him up with potentially the wild card of the tournament, a lot of people would say it's fair justice. So yeah, and when I say fair justice, I mean a lot of people want to see him fail. Let's not beat around the bush on that. So I think that's quite interesting from Sky how they've played that. But again, I think it's going to be a good night down at York Hall. Looking forward to getting down there and just kind of chopping it up with all the boxing community. I'm sure everyone's going to be talking about Wilder versus Ortiz, but down in London, I think that's going to be decent. Last week they had a card, and this is MTK. They had a card up in Liverpool. Thought the card was pretty good. Jeff Ofori came in with a performance which was not supposed to happen. Let's be frank. Came in and applied a lot of pressure. I thought he put in a very good performance against an MTK favourite fighter. And I think, he's done well. Fielding also kind of capped off the night with a great knockout. So that's good for him to kind of like just push himself up. I mean, let's be honest, light heavy, what's he really going to do? But, he needs to have a career, he needs to make money, and MTK are putting on these kind of cards and nights that I think, rookie fielding is probably suited for. So definitely looking forward to speaking on that. Guys, want to kind of focus on the AJ versus Ruiz pay-per-view news that came out this week. I think typically a lot of people are being critical. I think, and I've always said this. I think, look, if you like boxing, you're gonna pay your money. £25, you're gonna pay the money. £29, you're gonna pay the money. So, yeah, I think maybe you might have a right to argue, but I also do feel I think you got to look at the times. Even when you convert, US pay-per-view fees into pound sterling, we're always getting a better buck. We're always getting it for a cheaper price. So you got to take that into consideration. I think if we're looking at boxing as a whole in terms of a market, I think we've clearly seen that the money is in the US for a variety of reasons, but nonetheless, there's more money in the US. So Sky and essentially BT and Frank will all have to compete. So what's one area of doing that? Paying the customer, charging the customer more to see the product. Hey, this is old school business. So yeah, we've just got to accept that is what's going to be happening moving forward. 24, 29.95. You take it as it comes, and don't worry about that too much. I would say, in terms of the fee, I probably would say that what I'm not too happy with is the actual card. Okay, you got Hunter Povetkin. if there's rumours around Dillian White being added to that card, if he does get added to the card, we know it's not going to be a highly competitive fight. If they can make it a competitive fight, then you say, yep, it's value. But at the moment, you're looking at the card and you're kind of like, yeah, it's not living up to usual Joshua cards, and it's definitely not living up to the New York cards. See, I'm struggling to speak there, but yeah. So I would say definitely. We just got to look at it and say, look, it's $29.95. There's not much we can do. We're going to moan, but we're going to pay, or you're going to stream. But ultimately, streaming is going to be something that will be there. But you can see that they're trying to cut down on how that works. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing people's thoughts on that. Remember, guys, if you're listening online, leave comments, whatever platform you're listening to, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Spreaker. And obviously for the iTunes podcasters, please make sure to leave a comment and a like and share and tell a friend to tell a friend, that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, in other news, we had, again, overseas, slight breaking news with this interview from Billy Wagner. So for those that don't know, Billy Wagner is I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he's an executive on Fox Sports, PBC on Fox. That's the kind of crust of that. So he gave an interview with Chris Mannix talking about a bunch of stuff ranging from, if I'm being honest, I actually think there was a lot more topics that people didn't speak about, but they spoke on a range of topics from Pacquiao to Wilder Joshua to Spence Jr., Pacquiao to the PBC belts. But for those of you that didn't listen to it, I'll say definitely go and give it a listen. It's about 40 minutes. It's a 40-minute interview. Good content, good information. But to be honest, and people will say, oh yeah, Kojo, you're PBC though. But, well, I've got to say, to be honest, I think a lot of people have missed out. The whole PBC belt thing for me wasn't the biggest takeaway from that interview. Because when I heard him speak, and you have to think, who is he in relation to boxing and talking about a new framework and a new structure of awarding and appointing champions, he's not that experienced in that. So I do feel he said that maybe as bait, just to maybe to test the reaction. We've always known that was their plan from early days, but maybe it was just testing. But for me, I don't think there was enough meat within that conversation for people to now run away and say, yeah, that's definitely the direction they're going in. I definitely do not believe that. You've got to hear the interview for yourself. There was a lot of vague words. There was possibilities. These were the words he was using. So check out that interview. But some of the biggest takeaways, which I thought were interesting, to be honest, was really it's going to be the development, and I think we should keep an eye on this. It's going to be the development of the relationship between PBC and Fox and PBC and Showtime. Why do I say Showtime? Maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, Espinoza came out with a comment about there's too much boxing, blah, blah, blah. So what are we seeing now? Billy Wagner has said that Fox have priority on PBC fights, not fighters. And at the same time, he confirmed they have a premium position in doing so. So for me, that says, well, do Fox now have the ability to say to PBC, you know what, we want all the creme de la creme matchups that are getting made because we're paying this? I don't know. Possibly. Is it going to be that PBC give all of the fights of certain fighters to Fox? Possibly. Who knows? What I do think, and let me maybe spell that out for you. What you could see happening is you've got Ruiz. Let's just say, for example, Andy Ruiz beats Joshua in December, and then he has his first defense, and his first defense is against Chris Oriola. That fight, because it's, let's be honest, it's a big fight, but it's not high numbers. That fight maybe goes on Showtime. Then next, Ruiz beats Ariola, and then they're like, we're going to make the Wilder fight. The Wilder fight ends up being on Fox. So that means Showtime are potentially always going to be taking up the crumbs, or they're essentially getting the hand-me-downs or the rejections of Fox. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Why do I say that? Again, if you look from the structure, Showtime are owned by CBS. CBS are the biggest network in the US. CBS need to decide, are they going to support Showtime or Espinoza to allow them to have a bit of a stranglehold within the boxing game? And I think that's where it will really get interesting, because then all the other players will have to change their strategy, because CBS is, like I said, the biggest network. I think when CBS showed Thurman versus Porter, the numbers were crazy because it was free to air. So I think that's a big sort of dynamic in how this whole relationship's going to play out. But again, from the interview with Billy Wagner, that was a bigger takeaway for me. Again, I'm hearing rumours about Pacquiao potentially looking at Spence. In the interview, he didn't confirm anything, but he was basically more or less saying he's more confident. You could tell there were conversations being had by the way he responded to Mannix's answer around Pacquiao, maybe Spence. And like I said, there's all kinds of rumours flying around. But again, that was a bigger takeaway for me in terms of the confidence Billy Wagner spoke about. And like I said, in terms of the belts, it did seem like it's more of a pot shot. I think if you look at PBC, they've said they're not supporting the WBO. Whether that's right or wrong, that's not my decision. That's their decision. But I think if you look at it on a pound-for-pound basis, what could they do with a PBC belt realistically? Just think about the structure. Terence Crawford fights Errol Spence, all the belts on the line, including the PBC belts. Crawford wins. What happens to the PBC belt? You know, I think people have taken with that narrative and probably run with it just a bit too quickly, without really kind of. I hope they've listened to the interview, number one, but number two, without really asking certain simple questions. Who recognises them? Where are they? Are they worldwide? So yeah, I think that was probably more a slight bit of trolling, but yeah, I guess it worked because, you know, you look at the sort of feedback that a lot of people were talking about it, mostly criticising it, but a lot of people were talking about it. So it's getting their name out there, and guess what? Wilder Ortiz is coming up in a few days, so sometimes it's all about branding. But yeah, outside of that, we have Callum Smith versus John Ryder coming up this weekend. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not massively excited for this fight. No fault of Callum Smith's, but for me, Callum Smith is a good fighter, and we want to just see him in an exciting fight. So we can only hope. Look, it's really about 2020. There's a lot of guys on not just the Matchroom, that actual division that need to start contesting their belts and giving the fans, you know, delivering for the fans in terms of great fights, and I think they can do that. So John Ryder, what do we really expect from John Ryder? Let's be honest, he's going to probably give a good account for himself, but is he going to be able to, you know, apply pressure and cause any damage to Callum Smith? I don't think so. Callum Smith is a smart fighter, and I say that in terms of his ring craft. I think he's got great movement. He slips well, you know, head movement, jab. So for me, I think John Ryder is up against it. It's in Liverpool, so M&S Arena, homecoming fight. It's going to be really tough for John Ryder to get anything out of that fight, but all the best to him. Again, that card is probably going to go under the radar because for Matchroom, their big focus is on AJ Ruiz. So I think everybody's focused on that, even though the card is not great either. So yeah, for me, really looking forward to seeing Wilder Ortiz this weekend. I think it's one of those fights that, you know, we will be talking about it next week or from Sunday onwards and being like, shit, this was a great fight. How it goes down, you know, we're definitely gonna see that. I can see it going. When I say either way, I could see Ortiz potentially getting an upset, but I realistically see it being a Wilder maybe early stoppage or knockout, or later. And the reason I'm really going with Wilder, I just think the strength is going to be on his side. The confidence knowing that you've knocked this guy out before, the confidence knowing that you weren't at your fittest the first time you fought, and you feel more stronger. The fights you've had in the past, no matter what, even though he did not beat Fury, he would have learned from that. So yeah, for me, I think it's not about Wilder winning, because of course it is. I think he will win. I think it's the style. I think he needs to show a bit more from a skill set. He needs to be a bit more commanding with a jab. He needs to, be firm. When he's in his stance and he's throwing the jab, he doesn't need to look so wobbly. You look at Ortiz, he's got a strong stance when he throws his jab. Okay, he's a southpaw, but when he throws it, you very rarely see him off balance. Very rarely even see him being wobbled or buzzed outside of this of the first Wilder fight. So for me, Ortiz is going to look good in this fight, and that's Wilder's problem. He can't allow Ortiz to look good. I think he needs to dominate and then get more respect from the majority of boxing fans, because we will, like with the Fury fight, there's a good chance we're going to watch it and we're just like, Wilder's not looking good, but he's about to get the knockout, or the knockout comes. So yeah, definitely looking forward to it. So guys, listen, going to open up the calls, the lines. We've got 985, Mr. Appiah, resident. How you doing, sir? What's going on?
How you doing?
Yeah, we're doing good. Yourself?
Fantastic, thank you.
Good. What's on your mind? You looking forward to this weekend's fight?
Of course I am. Well, Ortiz versus Wilder. Well, as you know, Wilder's grown on me, and I'm going to have to go for Wilder to knock him out.
Yeah. Early?
He gets the job done.
Early or late?
I'm going to go for the 7th round.
Okay. Nice. And
Yeah.
in terms of, I'm going to ask you a question about Ortiz. I don't know if you've seen, he's looking good in terms of like shape. There's a lot of news about, added Larry Wade to his team. Do you think there is anything Ortiz could do to potentially get the victory?
No, there's nothing he can do, Kodjo. Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing he can do. Nothing at all. Listen, he'll dominate parts of the fight. We know that.
Yeah.
But Wilder, for me, he will do the job. Trust me. Yeah, Wilder all day.
Okay. No, that's interesting. And in terms of, I just wanted to go focus on, I want to ask you, going forward, we heard the news of the AJ versus Ruiz fight being a £25 pay-per-view. What's your thoughts on that overall?
Is that £25 what, in this country, pounds? Yeah?
Yes, exactly. £25, yes.
Well, people are still going to pay for it, ain't they?
Yeah.
It's a bit pricey, but people are still going to pay for it. And for the last couple of years, it's been $19.99, innit? So it's gone up. It's gone up in price.
Yeah.
As you know, things are expensive. So you know what? I'm not even really going to argue with that too tough.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue with that one. They've got to pay people, innit? They've got to pay fighters. They've got to pay whoever. So it is what it is. We can take it or leave it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I'm all right with it. I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'm all right. So yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and I agree with you. I mean, and it's not something to say of like, oh, we're rich, we're workers, we're grafting, we're not just sitting on money. But it's like you said, it's just the way of the times. Like the boxing and Sky Sports need to attract and, like you said, pay the fighters. So this is an opportunity. There were people saying it's an opportunity for Josh to cash out. They think Sky Sports are cashing out on Joshua. Do you think so?
I hope not. I do think he'll lose the fight. I still do think that. I think, but I hope he don't. I hope he don't cash out. Hopefully there's still like in Anthony Joshua yet. But yeah.
Yeah.
I do think he'll lose the fight.
Okay. No, I hear you on that.
Yeah.
So listen, thank you. Anything else on your mind you want to talk about?
Yeah, Callum Smith, John Ryder.
Yeah. What's your thoughts?
Callum. Yeah, I can see Callum Smith just rolling over him. Basically, John Ryder. He's got a lot of heart. He's probably give a good account of himself, like you said. But Callum Smith is too big and just too strong, I think, Kodjo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. I just feel like in all areas, offensively, defensively, technique, IQ, I just think he's got, you know what I mean? And even, I know Joe Gallagher doesn't get, I know he gets a lot of stick, but even the relationship that Joe Gallagher and Callum Smith have, that helps a fighter, because you have in your corner, you have someone that trusts you, that believes in you.
Yeah, solid.
Yeah.
Solid. There ain't good things,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
Considering John Gallagher's he's from Manchester and Callum Smith from Liverpool, they don't let that rivalry get in the way at all, do they?
not at all.
They just I think Callum's Manchester boy, isn't he?
Yeah.
So
they
get on with it. They do their stuff, and
yeah, no, definitely appreciate that, man. So listen, thanks Daniel for calling as usual and supporting. Gonna move on to the next caller. Take it easy. It's going out to 348. I think that's Mr. Young Tom. How you doing, sir?
How you doing, Coach?
Yeah, not bad. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm well, thanks. Good to be back.
Good. What's your thoughts, man? Busy fight this weekend. Big fight this weekend. Sorry.
A lot of boxing this weekend. Start off with Wilder Ortiz. If it lives up to anything from the first fight, we're in for a treat. But I think now Wilder's kind of shown each fight as he's progressed. He's shown a lot more sound fundamentals. Like he's able to, set his shots up nicely. I do think he needs to establish his jab a lot quicker this time. I think if he's too cautious early on, Ortiz, despite what we think about his age, his conditioning, the way he's been recently, I think he allows Ortiz to get into a little bit of a rhythm. It could be a bit of a difficult opening. Ortiz is able to get in close, kind of really tie up Wilder and just prevent him from using those long range levers that he's got. It's interesting, but I do think Wilder, once he's got a bit of momentum, once he's caught Ortiz, he will get him out of there. But I can see him getting rid of Ortiz about 6th or 7th round. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like we saw with Stavern. I do respect Ortiz's durability. I think he will hold out, but it's only a matter of time before Wilder gets to him. He's obviously got his number from the first fight. I think Ortiz threw the kitchen sink at him, and Wilder kind of just shrugged it off, came forward and forced the stoppage 2 rounds later. So I think it'll be a knockout for Wilder. I'm expecting it to be late.
Yeah, and one of the things I know we're going to touch on the other fights. I just want to ask you though. You did mention Ortiz's age, and we know that's a heavy factor in that. So, I mean, do you think there's any, and not positive, but obviously he's a year older, no matter what age he is. Do you think that's going to be a huge hindrance to him, or do you think the training that he's now employed can be a benefit?
I don't think it's a hindrance. I think with his experience, he's able to. He'll be able to hold his own. I think he seems to have peaked physically. He looks like he's in good shape. But then I suppose, how do you match that unorthodox style that Wilder's got? You can have a good physique, and you can look the part no matter what age you are. But I think that the age will catch up with him. And I think Wilder, he's looking more athletic each time he gets in there. He seems to have worked on a lot of things with his athleticism, but again, showing that he can box and that he can set his shots up, manage that distance, mid to short range, and land those big bombs. We saw that with Brazil. Brazil came in better shape than he did in a lot of his previous fights, and I think as well, you compare that with someone like Stavern, who didn't come in great shape. He came in horrendous shape, and we saw the factor there where he was more negative than what I think Ortiz will be. I think Ortiz knows that if he just pushes Wilder to the new extremes, the new lengths, then who knows? But I think Wilder will match him with obviously the power he's got. It's freakish. So.
Yeah, no. And the MTK Golden contract show is taking place this Friday.
They had the draw today.
Yeah, what do you make of the draw?
Yeah, good. I think, obviously, we would have liked to have seen Ahara Davis and Tyrone McKenna, but I think that Mikey Tachi and McKenna fight is going to steal the show. I think it's a good fight. That seems to be the one that you look at and think, stylistically, that's gonna gel. To be honest, I think if I was to choose 2 fighters, I think that will get to the final. I would be surprised if Ahara Davis gets beaten on Saturday. I just think that the guy that he's fighting, no one really knows of him. He seems that he's had a good amateur pedigree. He's awkward, but I think Sakti he's slept on a little bit as a fighter. Obviously he's kind of at that early stage. He's won a Sabanera, and now he's looking to kick on. So this tournament might shake up a few things. It might not be all about the talk. It's about what they produce in the ring. So
yeah, and no, I mean, and look, I do want to just kind of go back to you on that. I think the guy that O'Hara Davis is fighting, Yogan Loon, and like, I want to give you a little bit of a conspiracy here. No evidence, but there's a video of O'Hara while he was warming up. He was being very mouthy, and I would be interested to know when the draw was made. Was it before this, where he was being mouthy, or after? Because it just felt, the kind of stuff he was saying, it just felt like, you know what, let's give this guy the wild card, and if he loses, he's going to have huge egg on his face for the amount of crap that he was talking earlier. And it just feels like it's being set up like that, because this guy, Yogan Loon, which you just mentioned, like, he took all his videos off YouTube. They said he's had a good amateur program, been boxing from a young age. So if you ask me, you could argue it's a repeat of Josh Taylor. Probably not the right level, of course, but in terms of the ingredients, it sounds like an upset potentially bubbling.
And I mean, we were there when he fought Vasquez, and I'm not saying that this guy that he's fighting is of the same level. Obviously, Vasquez is a former world title challenger, or world champion, but he exactly. So I mean, I think if you look at the draw, no one in that, if you compare where they are at there, regardless of names and how much they've kind of been exposed over the years, I think no one really in that tournament is a standout. Like, obviously, O'Hara Davis has been there. He's fought at probably a much higher level than the others, but I don't think there's much to separate in terms of ability. I think there's a lot of good fighters in there. Lewis Benson's a good name. There's a few others. McKenna, obviously, he's had a few tough fights. I'm not really too sure if I could separate any of these. Really, I think Mamoon was the European champion, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So he's got a bit of experience as well. So it should be interesting. Yeah,
that's the thing. That's the key thing. There's definitely some good matchups. So I think it's going to be a good night down at York Hall as well. So yeah, looking forward to being in attendance and seeing how that one cracks off. And then what's else on your mind, mate?
To be honest, with Callum Smith, John Ryder, I'm expecting it, no disrespect to Ryder, to be a fairly easy defence. I think you'll dispatch of him probably early rounds. Can see it maybe a second or third round, because I don't think, in all seriousness, he's got the level of Hassan Nadam. I think if you were to say John Ryder, could he beat Hassan Nadam, you'd be a little bit kind of unsure. But then again, I think Ryder's proved a lot of people wrong. He's had 4 wins on the bounce, carries good momentum, but I mean, Callum Smith's a freak of nature at 175, the size of him. So
exactly, and that's the thing. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there when you said, you know, I'm sure Ryder will give a good account for himself. You know, I'm sure he's a likable guy. With no disrespect is intended, but you know, I think if we're going to talk about Callum Smith as the type of fighter that he is, he's got the Ring Magazine belt. So you don't have that Ring Magazine belt if you're not viewed as being somebody that's of a good height. I would say elite level. Callum Smith still needs to maybe prove that he should be at the elite level, but by going into the World Boxing Super Series, taking on all comers and knocking out George Groves, for me, I think, John Ryder, this is just a journey too far for you. But it should be a good night. I mean, the rest of the card, I think that card again, it's not jumping out at you. I would argue the MTK card is probably a bit better as well. I don't know your thoughts on that. So just wanted to get your quick thoughts on the news of the rumours of actually Dillian Whyte potentially facing Charles Martin on the undercard of Joshua Ruiz.
Oh, okay, that's the first I've heard of it, Coach. So the official sources are coming through.
Exactly. What would you make of that? You think?
I mean, it's not really a fight that I'm too interested in, because I think Dillian Whyte, if you look at his resume, does he really need to fight Charles Martin, who got blown away by Joshua and hasn't really picked back up a respectable array of opponents? You know, I think Dillian Whyte, if he was to face someone like a Michael Hunt, I know obviously he's fighting for Vetkin, but someone of that caliber would expect him to. So I'm probably more interested to see Dillian Whyte fight a Joyce or a Dubois than fight Charles Martin, because realistically, does it do anything for his stock? No. Is it a fight where it's just a tune-up? That's probably exactly what they're trying to do. They're not going to throw him straight back in against Brazil. They're probably just going to give him this bit of a payday, a new territory to try and steal some limelight away from the main event. But yeah, not too intrigued by it, if I'm being in all honesty.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. So listen, we're gonna move on, but appreciate the call, and look forward to catching your review, or catching up next week to discuss the post Wilder Ortiz fight.
Yeah,
Cheers.
definitely, guys.
Just take care.
Nice
Just appreciate the call today. Thank you. 041. Hello.
Yeah. How you guys doing, buddy?
Yes, we're all good. We're all good. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Tuned in not too long ago, man. But I just wanted to drop in a few points about this Ortiz guy. One question: has Ortiz ever failed a drug test before?
Yeah, he has. He has.
How long ago?
To be fair, it was. Well, I mean, so Ortiz and Wilder were due to fight, and then Ortiz failed a drug test, and then that's when Stiverne stepped in. But then that drug test was later more or less rescinded because they said it was linked to his medication for blood pressure. However, years ago he also failed a drug test, so he's got 2 on his record. Why do you ask?
I'm just still not too happy about the way they treated Leon White and how they're taking chances away from it, and Ortiz is just coming back. Because I've been talking to my boys in the States, man. They're all about squad PBO. I would say, what the hell's PBO? It's like, punching bag Ortiz, man. Bomb squad is gonna come and just do the business on punching bag Ortiz. Everybody knows that he's gonna lose it. And this time around, Bomb Squad guys is saying that he wasn't put up a show. He's just gonna slice and dice this guy. We all know that it's just get rich quick. I mean, fat up the place sort of fight. So I'm really not really. I mean, this fight doesn't really get to my couillons like a proper fight. Or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do think. I'm not gonna.
Punch him back Ortiz. That's all he's good for, man.
You know what I would say? I'm not going to say... overall, against Wilder, was he a punching bag? I'll say no. I'll say, yeah, he got knocked out and he got knocked down, but he gave Wilder the toughest fight Wilder's ever had on paper, if you just go by the 7th round alone. So I think punching bag is harsh.
Yeah, because the punching bag kept moving.
Yeah, punching bags don't... But in that sense, when someone's a punching bag... They usually don't move. So I get what they're saying because he's old. I get that they don't believe in the fight. But I think that, so like I was saying, in Ortiz's camp, he's got a guy called Larry Wade. He worked with Sean Porter. He's from a coaching perspective, his strengths are high intensity, pressure, and stamina. And that's a key thing in terms of stamina where Ortiz fell down. If you look back at that fight, again, I know what you mean by punching bag, but Wilder didn't win many rounds. He only won the rounds that he knocked him down. Do you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is Ortiz has the skill set.
But Ortiz didn't face the wild bombs in the beginning. The Wilder didn't release those wild bombs in the beginning.
Because he couldn't. I mean, if you, again, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, if you look at the fight early on, Wilder struggled to get any rhythm with the jab because of Ortiz's positioning. Don't forget he's a southpaw, so he came at Ortiz from a totally sort of like close opposite position. So from that perspective, he's closer. So his jab is closer. So Wilder just couldn't work his way in, and you could see maybe the 4th round.
What you do now, and that's the difference. Wilder is more adept now, and he knows what to do now.
That's where it's going to be. I mean, that's where it's going to be interesting because Wilder does improve by his fights, but again, I think. Yeah, it could go either way. I think that's why I'm kind of looking forward to it.
About this fight? Are you excited about this fight?
But I am, to be fair. I am. And I'll tell you why. Because there's going to be a knockout. There's going to be a knockout. And on top of that, I would say, watch the fight again. It's 10 rounds, but I would say you will see that Wilder struggled. So it's without the knock. We know that's Wilder's sort of secret power anyway.
Are you telling me that Wilder is going to be on the floor?
No, I'm not even saying that. I don't really think that. I don't think that. But honestly, like I'm probably less confident. You know what? In a weird way, I was very confident the first time I said Ortiz won't do nothing. I'm actually a bit less confident this time around, if I'm being honest. More conditioned, who he's got in his camp, and what he brings to the table, like, is still a good set of skills when it comes to boxing. And he's not afraid, so...
After your major coup with getting Wilder on the show, you put it down with getting us Ortiz's manager on the show, man.
To be fair, I did speak to his coach, Hermanio, but to be fair, it's with on the phone, it's the translation. Because literally, you ask Ortiz, he asks him in Spanish, then and it's like, it's...
Not getting Ortiz, but getting someone from his camp to,
Yeah, fair.
It's all good, man. You guys, big up still, yeah, big up, man.
Trust me, wait.
I've been sharing it for a lot of my friends, so I'm sure that people have been dialing in and everything, because, boy, just telling them that Wilder was on the show two weeks ago that they missed out, they're going to be dialing in, man. Big up, guys.
No, thank you very much, bro. Take care.
Yeah.
Cheers, man.
All the best.
All the best, man. So, yeah, that's it for another week. You heard the reaction. You're hearing the feedback. Punch Bag Ortiz, that's a new one. We're going to have to get that one trending online. But yeah, definitely, I'm looking forward to this fight. And I think, we're going to see all action. The card for this fight isn't great. You've got Leo Santa Cruz versus Flores. I think that's going to be interesting while it lasts. Santa Cruz, he does have something to prove. But I can't see that being, if I'm being honest, a big fight. I think it's just the names that have made them be the draw, but I can't see that being a big fight. I think Brandon Figueroa versus Julio Cega, that's probably a more interesting fight, but again, those are the smaller guys, so people don't always tune in. Really looking forward to the boxing this weekend. So guys, thanks for all the support. Don't forget to support us everywhere online, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Raps on TV, it's all the same. So listen, guys, enjoy the boxing this weekend and look forward to catching up with you next week to chop up what went down. Peace.
Ladies and gentlemen,